Chapter 3 Fashioning a New Society in the Wilderness. Following the crash of the Roman Empire, outlaws stole land from the local farmers who lived in England and other surrounding areas. Eventually, noblemen claimed all of the land and told these farmers that they could stay. However, these farmers were required to offer their services to the noblemen and monarchs. Additionally, the serfs had to pay taxes to the hierarchy and give up some of their produce. In return, noblemen and other hierarchies assured the serfs protection. The serfs never made money for their hard labor in the fields. However, they would occasionally sell their goods in a farmer's market and make a small profit. Along with the noblemen and monarchs, the Catholic churches held great power over the people. Anyone who chose to associate with a different church or create a new one were persecuted or even sentenced to death. Oftentimes, the medieval church would provide a place to stay and food to eat for the sick and homeless. During the 16th and 18th century, feudalism steadily shifted to a capitalistic economy. Due to the shift, noblemen could now kick the serfs off the land. Additionally, anyone involved with a feudal estate was now homeless and roaming the streets. Therefore, many people were now unemployed and starving. The gentries and merchants considered the poor to be very lazy. They believed the poor would only be productive when disciplined harshly. This caused tremendous stress and social tension within England. Right before the 17th century, mercantilism is introduced to England. The raw materials and new markets were beneficial in that they increased jobs and the economic growth in England. Following mercantilism, the Elizabethan Poor Law Act comes into effect. This law brought hope to the poor and offered relief to those who couldn't work. Eventually, this law became strict and would only help the deserving poor. Also, during this time, children were subjected to strenuous working conditions and most people were strikingly sexist towards women. Women were not even allowed to read in some public places. Moving along to the 1750s, we see a change in society. Two-thirds of colonists owned land, and only one-fifth of English citizens owned land. As landholders, they made profit off of their crops, candles, or garments. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was born. Although this gave many men hope, it didn't for the women. Women still didn't have the right to vote, they couldn't own property if they were married, they weren't allowed to serve on juries, and they were expected to work inside all day. They were often thought as being weak compared to the men. Along with sexism, Europeans were quick to judge differences in skin color. They would label them as savages or lazy. When looking at the white settlers in the first American culture, there was a lot of tension between them. A theft by a first American caused the deaths of a whole tribe. Most tribes, however, were eliminated due to the spread of diseases. Around the 18th century, slaves were being used for intense labor. Many slaveholders brutally disciplined their slaves and believed that this was the only way to teach them decent work habits. They defined African Americans and Native Americans as non-persons. Racism was a tremendous problem during this time.
Created using Powtoon.